Hello, everyone. As some of you know, my name is Erdi Ozturk. I'm an associate professor of politics and international here in London Metropolitan University. And gladly, I'm also serving as a non-resident scholar in ELIAMEP, Hellenic Foundation for European and Foreign Policy think tank's Turkey program. As you know, ELIAMEP's Turkey program was established in 2020 under the leadership of Yannis Gregoradis, and it mainly aims to promote reliable, mostly research-oriented information and analysis about Turkey's domestic and foreign policy, and beyond that, it is relations with Greece, European Union, United States, Russia, and other emerging powers. Today, as a part of our webinar series, myself and very valuable guests in the field, and for me, Professor Istar Gozaydin, Professor Levent Koker, and Professor Hakan Yavuz will scrutinize one of the permanent and important topic of Turkey: religion, state, and society relations, both in Turkey and beyond its borders. I may easily claim that one of the greatest paradoxes of the both early Republican or so-called Kemalist Turkey and today's Justice and Development Party AKP areas concern about the role, the position, and the function of religion. Indeed, we will talk on early Republican period, the role of religion in Turkey within the history today, but I think it is currently very important to scrutinize the role of Sunni Islam and beyond the borders of Sunni Islam under the leadership of Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Even though Justice and Development Party, one way or another, roughly after 2007, 2011, tried to promote or create a Pew's religious generation, according to the latest Pew and Vervali survey, the level of religiosity hasn't changed in Turkey since 2002. This seems that with an Islamic or majoritarian Islamic government, it seems that an oxymoron. Islamists with political power couldn't reach their ultimate desire within the society. I think it is quite familiar for us who has been trying to understand Turkey for a while, because what happened to the Kemalists, it happened to the Islamist political groups as well. So in here, I can easily argue that even from this junction, the topic of religion is not only about reading the past or understanding the present days. I think from this point of view, it remains as a significant indicator to understand the future of Turkey. Therefore, today we will talk about the history, we will talk about the contemporary time, and also we will talk about the future prediction of our valuable guests. So in this regard, I would like to start to ask a very classical question to Professor Gozaydin about the historical transformation of the role of religion within state and within the state structure. What has changed when we compare to the Kemalist period and then the Republican history and the current AKP period? The virtual floor is yours, Professor Gozaydin.
Thank you, Erdi. Thank you very much for the introduction as well. Actually, I'd like to focus on not the previous parts, I mean the pre-AKP times, but I'd like to focus today on the AKP period in terms of relations between the state and the religious affairs. So I'll start with 2002, but in time I will be coming back to making comparisons with the previous times as well. As I said, the 2002 was an impressive electoral victory for the Justice and Development Party, as we all know, in the parliamentary elections of 2002. They had a very impressive victory. And that actually brought some profound changes in Turkish politics. Initially, the AKP government sought to reduce the influence of the Turkish military establishment in politics. To do so, they introduced a series of legal and institutional reforms. One of them, for example, was back in 2003. That was the transformation of the National Security Council into an advisory board on national security policy. And that eventually brought the long period of military tutelage to an apparent end, to an apparent close. After eliminating the military tutelage and proposing significant initiatives to empower the citizenry and, well, actually sustain civil liberties, those were all very important steps toward democratization. Additionally, I mean, there was a lot of achievements in the Turkish economy during the first decade of AKP. Actually, that was an outcome of Kemal Dervish policies back in the 90s. But nevertheless, I mean, after the Turkey's economic crisis in 2002, into 2001, there was a boom in economy. I mean, the average annual growth was approximately 6%, and then the inflation rates fell from 3 digits to single-digit figures, which was very, very impressive. And they took positive steps towards solving the Kurdish problem, and some democratization efforts were taken to further the European Union membership. These were all remarkable indicators. But, apparently comes the but part, from 2007, signs of yet another fundamental transition emerged. Well, the emphasis on democracy appeared to fail away. The AKP's to that point, AKP had this conservative Islamist discourse, but it was sort of a more mild one, but that discourse intensified. And apparently, the attempts of constructing a hegemonic authoritarian regime appeared. Well, there may be several reasons for these changes, but nevertheless, I mean, although in the very first years, I mean, all the liberal and left lines were somehow supporting the efforts of AKP, certainly this situation changed from 2007 on. Actually, what happened was, well, let me just cite a few of the incidents that happened. For example, the attempted arrest of Hakan Fidan, and then what is publicly known as the Ergenekon case. These were the first link to these reckonings. And then the war between the Gülen community and Justice and Development Party government intensified. And that was, I mean, that actually started back in 2012, but just accelerated and had a upcoming dynamism. Well, well, what I read actually, I mean, this ended, as we all know, in 2015, the 15th of July, 2015. After 2015, according to Amnesty International's reports, in the first year, approximately 50,000 people were detained. So we're talking about an incident that's never happened before in the Republican history. So what happens, I mean, in my reading, it's interesting to observe, I mean, social glue appears to be in Turkey's political system, the social and in the society. It seems to be the Sunni understanding of Islam. It has been a continuation from the Ottoman times to the Republican times, but it's interesting to observe that at a certain point, the political power needs to get rid of its similar rivals. Well, here we can read it as avoiding to share the political authority, as well as redistribution of the economic capital. Then the new Turkey the discourse accelerated, and that actually expanded powers and fields of activity of the Diyanet. Social engineering actually happens to be a part of this political culture. Back in the 1930s, it was a part of the single party period. And with the AKP cadres, very similar legal and administrative tools were used. Needless to say, the objectives were 180% degrees different, not percent, degrees different. However, the tools and the means were very, very similar. Over the years, Turkey has created an enormous transnational religious network via Diyanet and the other transnational apparatuses to claim a prominent role as an actor in the international field. But that was accompanied with an increasingly authoritarian and overtly Islam-based policy, not only domestically, but abroad as well. I'm coming to an end, but let me just put it this way. The spirit of New Turkey, if you especially scrutinize the discourse in the media, the media that supports AKP, apparently, especially in visual and written media, there's not much a different one than these ones. When you scrutinize the discourse, the narrative, there's the imagined victim, there's a reactionary mood, and there's a resentful sovereign. That, for me, is explains the state of mind of the new Turkey. This emotional environment reveals a wounded political identity full of fear, anger, and resentment. The perception of the subject is that it is surrounded by a threatening and dangerous world. Therefore, two reactions appear. One is longing and desire for the golden age of the Ottoman Empire, and yet another reaction rises. That's the resentment towards the Republican elite groups from AKP. This feeling includes an unlimited political paranoia, a crude conspiracy imagination, a common discourse on social suffering, victimization. So that just happens to be with all their power for 20 years, still that happens to be the scene or the spirit of the ruling party nowadays. I will get into other parts later, so I'll just leave it here.
Thanks. There are lots of foods that we can scrutinize, such as whether the religion is a social glue or a social separative tool. This is something that we might discuss later on. But we pure political scientists talking about the role of religion and the transformation of countries under the shadow of religion. But as a person who don't understand that the legal and the law-based regulations, I really wonder Professor Koker's ideas. To the best of my knowledge, I'm a native Turkish speaker, so I can read the constitution very well. Turkey has been a laïc. I'm rejecting to use secular or any similar words. Turkey is a laïc country for a long while, despite of the transformation of the role, institutions, communities. How we would define the Turkey's laïclik and the transformation of laïclik within the transformation of the different constitutions under different powers, and what happened to under the AKP rule?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Erdi. Nice question. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for this invitation, first of all. Let me focus on some continuities and discontinuities within the context of Turkish state, society relations, and of course, which involves states' relations with the religious institutions or communities. Religion, or let me put it this way, when Turkey emerged, the Republican Turkey, I mean, from the ashes of the Ottoman Empire as a nation state, there was a foundational paradox that had been established historically. What I mean is this: Anatolia, the mainland of the Turkish state, Anatolia has been Islamicized throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So when Republican Turkey was established, the society was overwhelmingly Muslim. And, you know, the Armenian massacres or the population exchange. So Anatolian population have become a population predominantly Muslim. So this was the fact. But the norm in the Republican era was to establish a nation state based on a new legitimation formula. Because the Ottoman state was a multi-religious, multi-ethnic empire and used Islam as a legitimation ideology for the Sultanate, okay? So in 1921, the new constitution of the, I mean, this was before the inauguration of the Republic, but 1921 constitution was the first constitution based on the idea of popular sovereignty. People will be the sovereign of the new state. But the identity of the people was not decided upon. I mean, who would consist in the definition of the people? This was a debated issue in the first Grand National Assembly. And it was discussed in class terms in the Marxian sense, whether the workers, peasants, shopkeepers, doctors, lawyers, bureaucrats, will they be included in the definition of the people? And another thing, what about non-Muslims? Will they be considered as part of the Turkish people? And there was a debate on this. But the main predominant idea of the pupil was that the pupil, the defining identity element of the pupil was religion. It was the Muslim pupil. So when we think about the borders of the Misak-ı Milli, we see that the southern borders especially, we can easily see that the borders were drawn according to the majority of Muslims in the south. So Muslim identity was somewhat identical with the new conception of national identity in 1921. But in 1923, when the Republican establishment was started, and in the 1924 Constitution, it became the Turkishness that defined the new national identity. And the population was a population predominantly Muslim, but now the second phase of the Turkish history began. The Anatolian population was first Islamicized. Now the Muslim majority of the population needs to be Turkified, okay? So in order to Turkify the new nation, the new national identity had to exclude Islam. So in order to exclude Islam from politics, it had to be put under the control of a state authority. So Diyanet was created in 1924 to control the faith. This is written in the law that established Diyanet in 1924. Diyanet had to control the faith, worship, and morality of the new Turkish nation. Control to suppress the political emergence of, or political interventions coming from the religious part of the, or religious feelings or aspirations of the new Turkish citizens, okay? So from 1924 until the transition to a multi-party system, Diyanet was the agency that controlled religion, and with an aim to relegate religion to the private sphere. But after the transition to the multi-party system, until 1982 Constitution, those 30 years or so, Diyanet also became an institution that provided some service to the Muslim population in society. So it became an important institution to provide religious services to the population. And we also know that religion gradually became a prominent issue in Turkish politics, day-to-day politics, including elections, political party programs, etc. But in 1982 Constitution, something very important has changed. In 1982 Constitution, Diyanet was assigned a new mission. Article 36 of the current Constitution says that Diyanet is responsible, in a way, for providing national solidarity and sustaining national unity. And in a very awkward way of putting it, the article, the stipulation about Diyanet, says that being outside of all political ideologies or all political parties or all political views, as if providing national solidarity and national unity is something which is not political. Okay, so in the eyes of the Turkish state, national unity and national solidarity cannot be politically discussed. Okay, so Diyanet is the sort of objective institution that will provide national solidarity and national unity, which is the sole bias of the whole Turkish establishment. Now, AKP, after it came to power in 2002, of course, it had Islamist origins, dating back to National View movement, etc., the movement of political Islam in Turkey. But there has always been this differentiation and clash in Turkey between what late Sherif Mardin called modernist and traditional forms of nationalism. Modernist nationalists had the view to define new Turkish identity as an identity which tries to relegate religious feelings and religious practices or religious beliefs to the private sphere, not allowing religious sentiments or religious elements in politics to appear in the public realm, okay? But the conservative nationalism, for the conservative nationalists, Islam is the inseparable element of Turkishness. So we know this as Turkish Islamic synthesis ideology, which was propagated by Aydınlar Ocağı or the hearts of the intellectuals in 1970s. And AKP is a carrier of this current, but with more emphasis on the Islamist part of the identity. After 2016, the July coup attempt, things have changed a bit more. I mean, the generals of the 1980 coup decided to promote Islam as an element of sustaining national unity. Okay, so they reassigned the Diyanet's mission in that way. This was a departure from the Kemalist 1930s vision of religion as something private. They made religion present in the public sphere to promote national solidarity and unity. This was the generals, the junta's view in 1980. But AKP took this a step further after 2016, and Diyanet now became an inseparable political institution that justifies the authoritarian practices of the new Turkish state. So, to finish, to conclude, I see some continuities in the Turkish case and some discontinuities. One continuity is that Ottoman state was not a religious establishment, but it used religion, Islam, to justify or to legitimize the Sultanate. Today, we see some parallelisms between the Ottoman establishment and the Turkish Republican establishment, in the sense that Turkish state policies are now justified, maybe in part, but in a great part, by some reference to Islam. And I don't see much reaction from the so-called secularist or laicist opposition. Okay, we can discuss this later maybe. So this is one continuity. Kemalist era from 1923 to 1950, or maybe to 1945, when the first Imam Hatip schools were opened by CHP in 1947. There was a somewhat an interim period which differed in its relation to religion. I mean, Kemalist Republican establishment did not use religion to legitimize the Kemalist policies. To the contrary, Kemalist policies tried to maintain religion in the private sphere. So these were the continuities and discontinuities, but the discontinuity with the Republican Kemalist establishment started in 1980 with the 1982 Constitution, and AKP took this step further and brought religion into the center of the Turkish political system. This is okay. I mean, this is something perhaps maybe inevitable, given the fact that the society had become predominantly Muslim, and we had so many different heterodox Islamic groups who have, I mean, more or less some influence on political party formations. This is something that might be regarded as something that had to be lived. But what our projections would be for a future new Turkey, newer than the new Turkey, this is something that we will discuss.
Yeah, we will be there hopefully. I mean, what I understand from Professor Gozaydin and Professor Koker, I wrote a sentence a couple of years ago from one of my articles. I mean, we may easily call the role of religion within Turkey, it is a kind of an history of oxymorony. And it seems that it was an history of an oxymorony, and it will continue as a kind of an oxymorony. I mean, before moving to Professor Yavuz, I can see Dr. Christofis, Dr. Ceren, Dr. Çevik. If you have any questions and any comments, we will have a Q&A section at the end of our discussion, but you are free to write to the chat box right now. Now, from that legal and serious stuff, I would like to move a little bit to Professor Yavuz and ask the situation of the religious communities. Abolishment of the religious communities back in 1924. And then from that time, we know what happened to the Gülen movement, the role of Nakshis in politics and their transnational activities. We know they are quite active, and a big indicator. How you would positionalize the role of Sunni Islamic communities within the state, within the society, before and during AKP period?
Well, thank you, Erdi. Let me indicate that what is Islam in Turkey? What is Islam in Turkey has four aspects. There's something called Turkish Islam. And this Islam in Turkey has four aspects. One, Islam in Turkey is a social glue. It is at the basis of Turkish definition, whether you are Kemalist, Islamist, atheist, whatever you are, the Islam is the grammar and the glue of the society. This is number one. So second, Islam has become Islamism. It is also an oppositional identity to the establishment, especially the Kemalist establishment. So Islam is the glue, social glue. Islam is the source of our moral debate and discussion. Islam, because of the way in which the secularism implemented in Turkey, not the way in which in the West, but the secularism became an ideology to empower the political elite. This, in a way, reactivated and turned Islam into an oppositional identity to resist some of the excesses of this modernity without Islam versus modernity with Islam. I think this is the central debate in Turkey. And finally, the fourth aspect of Islam in Turkey, it is the legitimacy of the Turkish state. Ottoman state, Kemalist state, Mustafa Kemal, and the entire, I would say, you cannot imagine Turkish identity, Turkish state, the moral debate in the society outside of Islam. And now, when we look at the major characteristics of this Turkish Islam, I would identify 5 major characteristics of Turkish Islam, which is different than Arab, Persian, Indian, Malay, Indonesian, African, and diaspora Islam. So there are defining characteristics of Turkish Islam first. And I think both Istar Hanım and Levent Bey mentioned this tension between Orthodox and heterodox Islam in Turkey. On one hand, you have the state Islam, the Diyanet, versus the social Islam represented by these Jamaats or the Sufi orders. The second characteristics of Turkish Islam is that it is a Sufi Islam. It organized itself through tariqats and Sufi orders. And today there are 2 major Sufi orders in Turkey. One of them is Naqshbandiya. Second one, I would call it a neo-Sufism of the Nur movement, which is also informed heavily by Naqshbandi ideology and Naqshbandi tradition. Third, Turkish Islam is a frontier Islam. The security, the state-centric security plays an important role. And the fourth, I would say, Turkish Islam is a state-centric Islam. You cannot have Islam without state. This is the working logic in Anatolia among these Sufi orders in order to have a mosque, you must have a power of the state. This is something very common among the Naqshbandiya and the Nur movement as well. Finally, Islam, Turkish Islam, is the nation-building ideology. I think Levent Bey was right that the Islamization of Anatolia in the 19th and 20th century, to a great extent, was an outcome of mass deportation of the Muslims from the Balkans and the Caucasus. And these Muslims forced out from today's Balkans and Caucasus, they came to Anatolia. They also caused a major religious conflict against Armenians over the land issue, which is at the center of the Armenian question. And the other one is the Greek Rum population. Also, again, the land was a major issue. On the east part of Turkey, you have the tension between the Muslims from Caucasus and Armenians. On the west part of Anatolia, you had tension between the Rumeli, the Muslims from the Balkans, and also the Greek population or Rum population in that region. So Turkish Islam, again, has these 5 major characteristics. Now, there is a tension and paradox. I think Levent Bey mentioned Sheriff Mardin. I think it is an important also to look at what Mardin says. Islam, on one hand, is a glue for Muslims. It is an identity, a civilization, a morality. Islam is not a religion per se. It is something more than a religion in our society. It is the source of the public debate and public discussion in Turkish coffee houses. It is our public philosophy. It cannot be reduced to the activities in the mosque. So there is the sociological normative aspect of Islam. But our Islam, the Turkish Islam, is also Sufi oriented. Therefore, Islam on one hand unifies, but because of the Sufism, it also fragments. So you have this mahalle baskısı, or the pressure of the neighborhood, or the tension and competition among these different religious orders or jamaats or the communities also makes the Turkish Islam much more dynamic, I would say. So this tension, on one hand, you have the Diyanet, but these Sufi groups also, historically, they seek to penetrate the Diyanet as well. And there is a constant tension between state Islam on one hand versus the societal Islam of the Nurcus, Naqshbandis, Süleymancıyız, Menzil, or Altınoluk, or you name it, different kind of Sufi order. So this, the paradox, on one hand, it is a glue to unify. On the other hand, because of the characteristics of the Turkish Islam, it also fragments along the communal lines. So I would say that what is Islamism? Now, Islam versus Islamism. Islamism, I would say, we did not have the term of Islamism or Islamic State before 19th century. So Islamism is an outcome of the colonialism. It is the colonialism both in the Middle East and Africa and Asia created this incredible rupture in Islam. Islam turned into an ideology of resistance, and it has become some form of proto-nationalism in Indonesia, in Africa, Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, Hassan al-Banna against Egyptian colonialism, and also Jamaluddin el-Afghani. Mümtaz Türköner has one of the best books on the origins of Islamism during the Abdulhamid period as well. So in the Republican period, you have this legacy of Islamism. Now in the Republican period, Islamism has become the ideology of the marginalized, excluded Anatolian or Black Turks. It became their own identity. Secularism in Turkey became the identity of the white Turks. in a way. This is so that secularism and Islamism in Turkey has this power dynamic, this power tension over who controls the goods, who controls the resources. I think we need to see this power dimension between center and periphery, how it is manifested and framed through secularism versus Islamism. I think that is also another part. To end, then we can continue. Today, we have a different situation. I think today, both Islam in Turkey went through a major transformation. We can discuss this in the second half of our debate, but this Islamism today is disarmed. Islamism became the ideology of the center and it failed. But the secular, on the other hand, failed to provide a reliable project for the society as well. I think this is going to be a major debate, and I will leave here and we can continue in the second half. Erdi, thank you.
My pleasure. I mean, you mean the second half, but we are almost, I mean, in terms of timing, we are almost done. But as using my power as a moderator and like getting the majority behind me in front of our program chair, Yannis Grogeradis, I mean, I will continue a little bit more than the normal limit, if you don't mind, because I mean, starting now, what I understand, there is a continuity and rupture. This is obvious, but also there is some paradoxes and the transformations within the history in the state level. But what about the society? I think this is the biggest question for the 21st century. And in the chat box, actually, it's a very timely question. In the chat box, Panelis Natsos are like underline that there has been not an increasement, but at least a little bit of a decreasement regarding the religiosity of the new generations of Turkey under the AKP rule. What we know from on the paper written theory, I mean, the supply side of religion theory argue that if a state, whether it's Christian or Jew or whatever, if suppress religion or manage, control or dominate the religion, there has been an increasement or a decreasement into the religiosity. But I just checked the Pius and the World Value Service and now Condas current research. There has been almost no change when we check the Turkey's general level of religiosity since the beginning of the new millennium and in the contemporary times. But this is quite important. The individuals who define themselves as a religious person getting much more orthodox Islamist compared to the previous time. And on the other hand, within the new young generations, there is an increasement of deism, atheism, agnosticism, or other kind of rejections regarding religion and the religious practices. So how you can read with all of these situations while combining the unification or the engagement of the authoritarianism and the religious discourse of the AKP, transformation of the society and transformation of the world. I mean, how we can read the current situation of the Turkish societies when we're looking from the lenses of state, religion, and society. I mean, if you don't mind, I will change the order and start with Gozaydin, Professor Gozaydin, and then continue with Professor Levent Koker and then Hakan Yavuz, if you don't mind.
Do I understand it? Are you asking about the
society level
of the politics in society?
Yeah, the politics of society, and what would be the main reasons, despite of that much overdose use of religion with every single level of society and state, but there hasn't been any changes of the religiosity of Turkey?
With all the yeses and the nos, actually. I mean, I've been working on religion and politics over 30 years. So what I've observed is that in Turkey, actually, the political stance do not change in terms of any developments. Actually, the positions are there, but from time to time they get hardened if it's, I mean, if that's the word to use. I mean, you've mentioned about the Pew survey. Actually, that Pew survey reveals that as well. Yes, there is a sort of a polarization in the society. Yes, there is the group that that supports the politics of AKP, despite the authoritarian trends. Yes, there is another group that prefers a different lifestyle, a more secular lifestyle, with, I mean, their positions harden as well. But these are, actually, here there are, I mean, the position of Diyanet actually is important here. Yes, I mean, my colleagues have mentioned about the establishment of the Diyanet and what it does. Actually, what Diyanet does from the very beginning is to produce knowledge, an Islamic knowledge that is desirable for the state. I mean, the state, the political elite actually has an imagination, has a thought about the society, how to structure that society. And Diyanet actually is a very important tool, has been a very important tool from the very beginning in order to produce the needed, necessary the religious knowledge in order to create that that society. Well, in times of AKP, what we see, the changes, the increasing partnership with the ruling party. Especially we see it in the sermons. When we scrutinize the current sermons, especially after 2016, we see that there is this populism, as we see it in the AKP politics as well, that effect actually is transformed there as well. I mean, what I mean is AKP's Islamic populism has been designed to divide, dehumanize, criminalize even the opponents of the regime. And the Diyanet actually happens to be a very important partnership in that deed. I'll repeat it in other words. It's been used, Diyanet uses religion as a tool to help the AKP to dominate the Turkish politics and society. So, and when we think about that's not just the sermons, the publications as well. So there's been and Diyanet is not the only apparatus there. There are other apparatuses there. So what has happened back in the 30s happens, I'll just repeat it, happens to be the same in after the 2010s, but with a different, with a different objective. So that results in the polarization, in a way, polarization of the society. And certainly.
Sorry, Professor Gozaydin, I think your notes, your papers just swinging to your microphone, so there is a noise, background noise.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, dear. Actually, and this just, reflects in the in economy as well. Actually, we have to see the changes. The achievement of the AKP period is actually to legitimize, to create, or to raise another another economic elite, which has been ignored back in the times before 2000s. That new economic elite actually happens to be the supporter of the regime in very many senses, including the religious orders as well. Professor Yavuz, Hakan Bey mentioned about the religious orders. I mean, religious orders have been valuable voter blocks for the politicians since the 60s, not only in times of AKP. It's been a part of the system since the 60s. So, I mean, that is very understandable, actually. So, all these, economic interests and other lifestyle preferences, etc., happens to be the polarization reasons for the society as it has been beforehand as well.
Thanks a lot. I mean, before moving to
Erdi, can I add something? Can I add to follow up what Istar Hanım said?
Just let me one sentence, because I mean this point is quite important that you and Professor Koker would like to answer. I mean, Salim Çevik, that I read some of his studies like in a very great interest, up touch quite a good point. I mean, we all mentioned about this, like the differences or the conflict between official Islam, Diyanet, or unofficial Islam religion communities. And he asked that, does this distinction still hold under the AKP rule? I mean, I have an answer for these questions, but I'm not the main actor in here. So, so if you don't mind, Professor Koker, let's move to Professor Yavuz and then come back to you. Okay.
Well, thank you. I think there is something is happening in Turkey that I think it is more or less the religion studies on religious sociology or sociology of religion. In the case of Europe, they talk about the issue of the 3 B's: believing, behaving, and belonging. In Turkey, behaving is in decline. Okay, but the young people, what I see, that the belonging is now going up. In other words, this tension between believing, behaving, and belonging, that the piety is declining, yet belonging is somewhat becoming much more enhanced. And if you look at the book sale in Turkey by Dergah Yayınları, one of the main most respected conservative Islamic outlet in Turkey, they say the book sales are the on Sufism is going up. The Sufism or the issues about the metaphysical questions or Islamic philosophy, they are there is more demand or hunger for this kind of knowledge versus the knowledge about the behaving, about namaz, about oruç, about fasting, this or that. So what you are seeing here is that there is a change, I agree, but this does not mean the decline of Islam. I think this piety or behaving is one aspect of Islam. But you also have this aspect of the believing, aspect of the belonging as well. Finally, I want to indicate something that is the production of Islamic knowledge. Production of Islamic knowledge used to be in the hand of Diyanet, and somewhat Diyanet had also respected publications, a consensus kind of publications. But today, the production of Islamic knowledge moved away from Diyanet. Diyanet's publications and productivity is more questioned, under questioning at least. So this is something very important. This production of knowledge on Islam shifted, I would say, more and more to civil society, and also some major universities, ilahiyat fakülteleri, and Ankara to some extent, and some of the groups, they left Ankara Okulu. So you have an interesting religious landscape in Turkey, and I will end here, Erdi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, before moving to Levent Koker, there is a great discussion within the chat box regarding the different level of surveys of the religiosity. As a person right now dealing with all the different kind of data sets, I may say that some of the data sets indicate that there has been a decreasing of religiosity in Turkey, but most of them are using the convincing sample. So this means that our data is not enough to determine, or not enough to say something precisely about the issues. Pew, word value, and in Turkey from Conda, they've been using random sample surveys. They are much more precise, but indeed we are doing a social science. What is precise? I mean, I think this is an unknown question. I mean, now I would like to move to Professor Koker about the society situation, but if you can answer the Dr. Çevik's question as well, does the distinction between official and unofficial Islam is still valid under the AKP reign? Or let me add one more question. Are we really have a top imam who is living in Beştepe?
Are we having what?
A grand imam, top imam, imams living in palace?
Yeah, maybe for some, yeah. Let me put the problem, I mean, the way I see the problem this way. Turkish society is a very pluralist society. We have different ethnic groups. We also have different religious or faith-based communities. Although we know that the 99.9% of the Turkish population are Muslims, there are differences among Muslims. We know those differences in the form of heterodox communities, the tarikats. We also know that there are differences between practicing and non-practicing Muslims. A man on the street would say he or she is a Muslim when you ask religion. But when it comes to the way they practice or they live their religion, there are a lot of differences. So one question there was about what is the difference, or is there any difference between a conservative and a pious Muslim? I believe there are conservative Turks who don't practice religion as a practicing pious Muslim does, like 5 times of namaz a day. Some maybe don't go even to a mosque, but from Bayram to Bayram. I have friends like that who drink rakı, for instance, but they don't drink on Thursday night because next day is Friday prayer. Okay, and they stop drinking during the whole Ramadan. So are they conservative? In a sense, yes. Are they pious? Maybe, but they are not practicing in the way some communities, some religious communities practice Islam. On the other hand, dear Doğan Bermek asked a very, rightful question about the Alevi community. And the treatment of the Alevi community by the state is a continuity I forgot to mention in my earlier talk. There's a continuity in the way the state treats Alevi community from the Ottomans, from the times of Yavuz Sultan Selim to today. I mean, they are excluded. They are not even recognized as a faith-based group. There's a debate, but still, very recently, we saw this debate about the electricity bills and Diyanet. I think the state is paying the electricity bills of all religious institutions in Turkey, but Alevi Cemevis, they have to pay their own electricity bills because they were treated by the state as commercial sites. Now, thanks to Erdogan government, they are not treated as commercial sites now, but they are treated as residencies. So they will pay less, but they will still pay because the state insists stubbornly not to treat Alevis as a community of faith. Okay, so this is one thing. So this explains, or this picture tells us how pluralist the society is. What is the problem? The problem is that the state needs a unified, homogeneous, monoblock society that could provide a basis of legitimacy for its existence. So the bulk of the heart of the problem is this state emphasis on the unity, integrity of society as one, okay? So, but there's a paradox. Again, we have to face this. Turkey is a modern state which signed almost all human rights agreements, starting with United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, twin international conventions on cultural, economic, social, political, and civil rights, and also, more importantly, the European Convention on Human Rights. So these conventions, this international law obligations of the Turkish state provide for norms that bind Turkish state that has to lead the Turkish state to accept that individuals and groups living in Turkish society have rights to live their religion as they see fit. So if an Alevi, for instance, says that this is my place of worship, it's a place of worship. It doesn't have to be a mosque. It doesn't have to be a church. It doesn't have to be a synagogue. Synagogues and churches are under the protection of Lausanne Treaty. We all know it. But Alevis are not protected under any law except human rights conventions. One point regarding this matter, the compulsory religious courses in schools, constitutionally established compulsory courses of religion in schools, they are challenged by Turkish Alevi citizens, and European Court of Human Rights decided that they are in violation of the European Convention of Human Rights. The electricity bills, on the other hand, is also an issue decided as a violation of Alevi's human rights. But these decisions were not implemented by Turkey, and they are pending in front of the European Council Committee of Ministers, just like Kavala and Demirtaş cases. So there's a paradox. Turkish state envisioning society as a monoblock entity, which doesn't accept any pluralities within that, but society being plural in its actual factual being. So this paradox has to be resolved. And if we are going to think about establishing a new Turkey in the future and get rid of all these authoritarian dilemmas we had been facing and now had been grappling with, we have to solve this problem by reconstituting a new political identity for this pluralistic society. So society has this kind of, will have this kind of impact in the future. But up to now, state determines the legal framework within which society, groups and individuals can breathe or suffocate. That is how the state determines.
I would like to ask just one last question, but I just kindly warn you, you have maximum individually 5 minutes, no more than 5 minutes. Yeah, you are my seniors and you touch upon my career in different parts of my life. So I can't distract you, but please don't force me to use my moderator role. After that, we will open the floor for our participants. Yes, we talked about the state level and the society level paradoxes and all other transformations. What about the outside of Turkey's territories? What I know from my studies, there has been, quote unquote, a global rivalry between different Muslim majority states who will be the leader of the global ummah. Indeed, from my point of view, no one. We know the relations between Muslim Brotherhood and Turkey, both in Turkey and outside Turkey. We know the role of Diyanet outside its territories, but how we can read the Turkey's transnationalization of official and unofficial state or religious apparatuses outside its territories? Is there a transformation within this process? And last question, I think it would be great if you can conclude with your remarks. If we are now living in a new Turkey, what would happen after AKP, the role of religion with the brand new Turkey? Still will be the same, still an instrument or an objective? So if you don't mind, I know Professor Gozaydin is about to write a book about the role of religion both at home and abroad. Let's start with Professor Gozaydin, continue with Professor Koker, and ended up with Hakan Yavuz, if you don't mind.
Of course.
You are muted. You are muted.
Okay. Actually, my answer for the the impact of AKP abroad will be quite short. First of all, we're not. I don't assume there is any demand from any group in the world to have a global head of the Muslim Ummah. We're talking about international interests, we're talking about international powers, so nobody wants anybody to be a leader for their own group. So, I totally agree with you. I just push that aside. The other question, well, we all know that one of the desires of AKP happens to be the glorification of the past. Hakan Bey wrote a very, a rich book about that. The nostalgia for the past, and that happens to be a part of the politics of AKP, especially in Lens. Which used to be a part of the Ottoman world, especially the Balkans. It's Erdi's actually field, so I won't get into that, and in some other places as well, but definitely it has nothing to do with the Middle East. Middle East is not a place, although the desire may be there, the demand from those people do not meet the desires of, I believe, AKP. So certainly, there is an attempt.
2 minutes.
Sorry.
2 minutes.
Okay, there's a change in the politics, and there's a change in the politics, and definitely Turkey demands more in the international arena to be an international actor. But still, that's that's just in the Balkans and some Central Asian parts as well. They've tried to have battles in Africa, where but that didn't. Apparently, that doesn't work. So, the very last question: what happens after? If there is, I believe that there will be some sort of an early election in order to control the to control the economic problems, I mean, sometime in fall. And that will be a very determining point for Turkish politics. But I don't think that, I mean, I mean, some people assume that there will be a fall of AKP. I'm not one of those. I mean, to the best, I just give 50-50% to the chances. Saying that, but I do believe that if for one reason Erdogan happens to be not the leader of AKP, the AKP will somehow be like some other political parties of Turkey in the past. I mean, without Özal, the Motherland Party could not survive. The DSP couldn't survive without Bülent Ecevit. And I guess AKP won't be AKP without Erdogan. So, and I don't think that there is somebody that will be actually an alternative to AKP, to Erdogan in AKP. Certainly there are names like, Yıldız Hulusi Akar and Süleyman Soylu, but I don't think that that will be a very effective period if somehow Erdogan happens to be out of the scene. So the important question here is whether the economic elite that's been rising since the 2000s, without the protection of AKP, what will be the situation for those groups? That's much of an interesting question for Turkey, I believe. And that will somehow enlighten the changes in the in the politics of Turkey, both in society and in state. Thank you.
Pleasure. Professor Yavuz, we will continue with your Professor Koker, sorry.
With me.
No.
We'll have the last word.
Okay. Buyurun, Levent Hocam, buyurun.
Okay, thank you. Panayotis Rantsos, I think, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, so apologies. He has a very interesting remark comparing the situation in Franco and post-Franco Spain. 80% of young Spaniards consider themselves as practicing religious in 1976. And 4 years after, in post-Franco era, the percentage became 47%. And he says, maybe we can see similar decrease in Turkey after Erdogan. This may be the case. I mean, it might be interesting. Maybe not that much, but still we see some maybe decrease, but Erdi doesn't agree. I mean, I'm not in good command of data sets, so I'll leave it at that. But the problem is, Turkey has never been fully democratic. According to Freedom House records, Turkey has always been a semi-free country, but after 2016, for a hybrid, Turkey always had a hybrid regime, not fully democratic, not fully free, but authoritarianism changed shape and depth in Turkey after 2016. So it became an unfree and came closer to the closed authoritarian regime type of political systems. Why was that? Why did we experience a shift from semi-free, semi-democratic, partly authoritarian hybrid regime to a regime that came much closer to a full authoritarian type of political system. What were the reasons behind this change? I think one of the main reasons, there are of course many reasons we can contemplate upon, but one of the reasons I have in mind is that state has always seen the pluralist formations in society as a threat to its existence. And it became especially acute during the Syrian crisis, the outbreak of the Syrian civil war with the Kurdish issue, etc. So a Turkish Islam synthesis type of nationalism backed by a strong political figure like Erdogan seemed to be a viable solution for the Turkish state to protect its existence as a single nation state entity. On this basis, I think in post-Erdogan Turkey, we have a chance to see that setting up or building a nation state in Turkey has come to an end. Saying this, I have in mind the distinction made by Alfred Stepan and the late Juan Linz, the late Alfred Stepan and Juan Linz, nation state and state nation. Nation state is the political formation in which state bases its legitimation on a unified, homogeneous entity called the nation. So this requires a political ideology named nationalism, as we know it, by the late Ernst Gellner's formulation. But state nation, according to Stepan and Linz, state nation is a formation of state which is based on the plurality or acceptance of pluralities in the societal level. So societal pluralism has to be reflected in the political institutions and values of the new state. So I think we will have a new formation of a new state in post-Erdogan era. But the thing is, I think we will experience a transitional period because the opposition, the bulk of the opposition in Turkey, I have in mind CHP, the Good Party or E Party, and the others, excluding the People's Democratic Party, the HDP, they are still not aware of the fact that nation-state adventure has ended. And there will be a transitional period for them to realize that this is no longer the aim and this could no longer be the defensible political position in Turkey's future.
Thank you so much, Professor Koker. Before moving to Professor Yavuz, I think Hüseyin Uçan is not with us anymore, but I mean, what I heard with an unmuted position, let me underline one more time for the records. ELIAMEP is an independent research institution. We are professional academics, and we are trying to scrutinize some of the critical issues of Turkey independently, freely, as we have been doing for a long while of period. So, Professor Yavuz, what you can say us as the last words about the transnationalization of Turkish Islam and the future of Turkey with or without Erdogan?
Thanks again, giving me this chance to issue the last fatwa about the situation of religion and politics in Turkey. Now, as far as transnational Islam, I think something changed in Turkish foreign policy. Islam has become an instrument to reach out, bridge with African and Asian countries. We are seeing Islam as a mean of foreign policy tool in the hand of Justice and Development Party. There is a sense globally out there. The Muslims in Indonesia, Malaysia, Crimea, in Africa, they feel that they are under siege. This perception of siege is also becoming very dominant in Turkey. And I want to highlight what Istar Hanım emphasized. What is emerging in Turkey is a victimhood nationalism. This is something very important process. This victimhood nationalism also manifests itself in terms of nostalgia for the empire, but the European Union played a so much negative role where we are today, especially in terms of 2007, when Sarkozy and Merkel openly rejected Turkish membership because they said Turkey does not fit into Europe because of civilization and culture. I think that is something very important turning point in the AKP's foreign policy as well. So we are in this situation to some extent, I am not saying fully, but to a great extent because of stupid, short-sighted, and I will say racist policies of the European Union when it comes to Turkey. And when it comes to the issues of Islam, I think the France and their notion of secularism plays an important role. Now, if you look at I think we are going to have transnational Islam was imposed on Turkey in 1993 and 94 during the Bosnian War. Bosnian War played an important role in the local mobilization of the Jamaats and Sufi orders in Turkey. That was the first attempt, and they were successful to a great extent. And Erdogan was in the center of this grassroots mobilization for Bosnia and Herzegovina. I think Bosnian issue is not solved. You have a number of issues in the Balkans which will activate this dormant Islamic solidarity. It is there, whether we like it or not. I live in the United States. I have Arab students, American Muslim students, including African-American Muslims. They all admire Erdogan. Why they admire Erdogan? Because the siege mentality, even in France, in the banlieues, the Muslims, they have the sympathy for Erdogan. And I think the siege mentality is something very important we have to examine. And Turkey, unfortunately, both the secular or Islamic CHP, İYİ Party, AK Party, whatever you call them, there is this formation of victim identity. And I think this is something the European Union needs to take into account. And finally, I tend to disagree with Levent Bey. I don't think that the distance between state and society is not that great in Turkey. The Turkish state manifests all the problems and authoritarian tensions and tendencies of Turkish society. The problem is not at the state level. Problem is at the society level. Our political culture, unfortunately, I would say, is not very open and conducive to democratization. And from my own reading, what I would argue that the states are what they are more or less manifestation of their own society. We do have, I agree with him, Turkey has become less democratic, Turkey became more authoritarian, but the problem is the CHP has the same authoritarian mentality, İYİ Party has the same thing, AK Party has the same thing. Our problems are, we should not leave the problem in front of some abstract set of institutions of state. The problem had to do with us, the society and individuals. We are culturally, mentally, unfortunately, not very open to pluralism and this democratic way of living together. I think this is, our culture is authoritarian. And I think this is
Hakan hocam, last two minutes.
And the last 2 minutes, let me finish with Sheriff Mardin. What Sheriff Hoca says, it gives me hope. He says in Turkey, both the Kemalist and Islamist, they move in the same direction toward modernity, but with different cars and different norms. I think this is, gives me a hope that we should not, the goal, if you look at Turkey, Turkish Islamic groups were very much in favor of European Union membership. Nakşibendis, Nurcus, Özal, Erdogan until 2007. And we need to also question the attitude of the European Union as well. What is going on in Turkey today? A great extent, short-sighted policies of European Union, unfortunately, especially Sarkozy and Merkel, both of them, and then also Macron to a great extent. We are in this great mess in the country. But to finish, and I want to highlight again what Istar Hanım said, this victim nationalism is becoming a new trend in Turkey. And I will end here. Thank you, Erdi.
Thank you so much. I really would like to open the virtual floor for Q&A, but the ELIAMEP Management Center warned me various times. So I just need to wrap up. Hakan Yavuz wasn't that true. He has right to give the last fatwa because always moderator can give the last fatwa. What I understood today, even though religion and politics is a relatively new subfield of political science and international relations, it is necessity for us to understand, for Turkey particularly, religion, whether Sunni Islam or Alevi Islam, religion shouldn't be read as only a religion, not for yesterday, not for today, and not for tomorrow. Only when we researchers or the person who has been scrutinizing Turkey read religion together with politics, power relations, and identity, it would be meaningful. In this regard, scrutinizing the variance of religion in Turkey is essential not only to understand the AKP, but also understand Turkey and its relation beyond its territories. I would like to thank you very much to Professor Levent Koker, Professor Istar Gozaydin, and Professor Hakan Yavuz, and all our valuable guests for their comments, for their contributions, for being with us for 1.5 hours. And thank you so much, Mariana, for your tolerance to let us to continue that long. Thank you so much.